All right, what's going on, y'all? So today we're going to talk about how to effectively combine bodybuilding, high-intensity bodybuilding or power building with endurance. So running, plate carrier running, rucking, any endurance event, but specifically how to do this while being as jacked as possible. So while really maxing out the power building or bodybuilding side while still crushing it on the endurance side as well. You know, most hybrid content out there is really more tailored to more of the runner first, with just a little bit of lifting in, like runners trying to still lift. And it's a lot of guys that, you know, still look great, but they're really kind of on the lean, skinnier side. This is going to be for those of you out there more focused on being a hybrid monster, really crushing it with weights, crushing it with your strength lifts, crushing it with the amount of mass you have on, while still really pounding it out on the road with mileage or whatever your endurance modality is. So this is, you know, I'm about to step out on a plate carrier run myself. Right now I'm in a training block where I'm doing a lot of plate carrier running, but still trying to max out the power building side. I'm trying to really increase lifts at the moment, and at a minimum maintain my size, if not increase a little bit of mass in the process while upping mileage. And what I'm going to be talking to you about today is what I do personally. I work with, you know, I would say at least a third to half of my client roster is always hybrid guys that have, you know, crazy goals, whether that's prior active service military or getting ready for a special operations school, law enforcement, firefighters, or just people that just have crazy endurance challenge goals while still wanting to be absolutely jacked. And you absolutely can do this if you do things right. You know, a lot of people believe that you can't really be big and be a runner at the same time, or be big and do some crazy cool, you know, endurance challenges at the same time. But if you do the things right, you absolutely can. So the first thing to get out of the way, this is one of the most important aspects to this, is there is a volume and intensity spectrum. And on either side of the spectrum, you've got intensity all the way over here, volume all the way over here. They're completely on opposite ends of the spectrum. And this is where most hybrid people trying to lift and run, or lift and do whatever endurance modality, they're just doing a bunch of junk volume and just, you know, everything's just way too much, or they're doing way too much intensity. Everything is, you know, just all out. And this is where you see guys can't keep any muscle in their frame. They can't get to any impressive strength numbers. And a lot of times they can't even get really impressive run numbers. So this is where you need to have this balanced out. So on the intensity side, this is where you need to keep your lifting. So your power building, your bodybuilding, whatever it is, you need to keep this on the side. And every single time you step foot in the gym, you need to be all out. It needs to be taking your working sets to failure. It needs to be trying to crush your logbook numbers. You need to be having that all out intensity every single time you step in the gym. If you truly have that all out intensity in the gym, you're going to be able to have volume at a little bit of a lower level. You know, the intensity is going to be very demanding on your body, but volume, from a fatigue standpoint, volume actually brings up fatigue at a little bit higher level than just pure intensity does. So getting under heavier loads, but only doing that for 1 or 2 sets, actually drives up systemic fatigue at a little bit lower of a rate than doing less loads but for more volume. So this is where we want to keep the volume on a lower to moderate end, and it is really goal dependent here what training phase you're in and all of that, but a lower to moderate end, but always have this maxed out intensity. That way on the endurance side, this is our volume. This is where now we can increase the mileage, or even if we're in a maintenance phase, we're only doing say 3, 4, maybe 5 mile runs. This is our volume. This is where, you know, 90% plus of your endurance work, your runs, whatever it is, this should be in zone 2 or even lower zone 2. It should be very low intensity, and then 10% of your runs or endurance, whatever, can be that kind of cool content style stuff. That's the interval training, the tempo runs, sprints. That's where you can really have a lot of intensity. You know, save that for 10% of the time. You know, I personally program that into myself, you know, maybe once every 2 to 3 weeks. You know, most of my runs are always going to be zone 2. I'm getting ready to step on this plate carrier run, and it's going to be a lower zone 2 run. So it's going to be very slow, but, you know, it's getting the work in. So always keep the balance of volume and intensity laid out. Now, this is where how you do this is going to be dependent on what the goal is. So with us keeping the goal of always wanting to be as jacked as possible, increasing our strength, increasing our muscle, or maintaining a high level of muscle mass, how much we're jacking up the volume over here, that's going to be dependent on the goal. Like right now, are you just trying to have a baseline level of fitness? Are you trying to train up for some event, trying to train up for a military school, trying to train up for an ultra marathon? If you're doing that, this is where mileage is now going to be coming up. What you need to do is when mileage is increasing, when volume is really increasing over here, we don't touch intensity. This is always our standard variable that we keep locked in. Volume can come down over here. It's a scale. So as volume comes up over here, we can bring volume down over here, but our goal should always be to be jacked. So we never want to come below our baseline set of strength. So this is where logbook is very, very key. Have a baseline set of strength that you do not dip below that. So now what you can do is you can find out what is the minimum effective amount of working volume, working set volume you can have in place to still maintain those numbers. That way, when you're really in a high intensity, when you're in a training block where you're having to increase a lot of training work over on the endurance side, you can bring your volume down over here, still maintaining max intensity, and allow that work to transfer over here. Now, this is where I get asked the question, well, what should the training split be? What should the frequency be? This is where it's very person dependent. It's very goal dependent. So, if you are training for a half marathon, that's obviously going to be very different than if you're training for an ultra marathon. First off, what I can tell you is my guys on my roster that I train that are pure just runners. They're just training for an ultra marathon. They don't do really, frankly, any strength training. They could be running 6-7 times per week and pretty high mileage. Whereas their counterparts, their hybrid counterparts that are crushing it on the bodybuilding or power building side, that are also training for the same goal, they can get away with less volume over here. Maybe they're only doing 4 or 5, maybe 6 runs per week with a little bit less mileage. It's still going to be a lot of mileage for an ultra, but they can get by with less because they're going to have more systemic stability. They're going to be less injury prone. They're going to be more injury resistant. They're going to have more leg strength, all of that. So that's where, depending on how much you're crushing it over here, where your leg days are at, all of that is going to dictate, you might actually get by and need to get by with less volume over here. My point is I know many guys, and I've worked with many guys that have crushed big endurance events like ultras, doing way less training volume than just their kind of just pure running counterparts. Now, the goal here is to be jacked. We're not trying to, set world records in these events. We're not trying to, break a 2:30 marathon. You're not going to do that by being as jacked as possible. This is where we're trying to be as jacked as possible while still crushing endurance events. And you can still have really good performance with that, but you got to keep in mind, you can't really have everything here. So, speed is going to be the thing that you're going to have to be a little bit more humble on, maybe being beat by a skinny runner, with certain events. So now with frequency, with training splits, I personally prefer push-pull leg variations. Now, that does not mean necessarily just push-pull legs, but push-pull leg variations, meaning it could be for some people that it's just one leg day in per week, and you could have like a push A and a push B, a pull A and a posterior day and a leg day. This is very person dependent, very goal dependent, but I love push-pull leg variations, and I love upper lower splits, and I even love full body splits. Once again, this is very person dependent, what their goals are, how much training time they have, how they recover, all of that. But what I can say is frequency is going to be your friend. Don't be afraid of frequency. I would very much recommend, instead of trying to go in the gym and say, take the bro split, for example, where you're hitting one muscle group per day, rather than going in and crushing your chest with 20 working sets, you're going to have a much better time and much better performance as a power builder, bodybuilder, whatever, if you're going in and you're spreading that volume over a few days throughout the week, especially with this type of training. With this type of training, frequency and stimulation is going to be a lot more important especially than if someone wasn't also trying to crush it on the endurance side. I've tried this many times with many different splits throughout my career. I've done less frequency. I've done higher frequency, and higher frequency, for those of you that are trying to crush on the endurance side, is definitely going to help you on the lifting side. So keep that in mind. Now we need to talk about the food thing. Now, this is something that I'm going to save for a whole other video, because hybrid training with, when it comes to food is, this is a very big topic, but you're going to need to eat. This is, I would first off say, I say this in pretty much every diet video, but you need to get as close as you can to eliminating processed food. You're going to have a crazy fast metabolism. Your engine is going to be burning that you could get away eating junk, but you're going to need to eat closer to single ingredient foods, because you're going to need every bit of help you can get for recovery, digestibility, and really getting that good ingredient quality that you're maxing out what you're putting in your body. With that, you're going to eat a lot, and I would recommend eating a lot of carbs. This is something that you're going to be training a lot here. If you're not eating enough, you're going to see it suffer on, especially the power building or bodybuilding side. You're going to go in the gym one day and you're going to be way down in numbers. This is where you're going to need to eat. You're going to probably be lean doing this style of training. It's hard to get fat when you're crushing power building while crushing volume out in the road. But if I was to recommend anything, if you're trying to be as jacked as possible, don't try to be 5% body fat doing this. This is not where we should be at. That 8 to 10 or even 10 to 15 is even better. % body fat is going to work much better in your favor. So these tips, this should get you started. I can build a whole series out on this. My last video I did was talking about how to combine bodybuilding with power building, essentially how to power build effectively. This is kind of a video kind of going in line with that. I'm going to start talking a lot more about this, because a lot of stuff you see out there right now is not helping, for the guys that want to be actually jacked, like a lot of us want to. So keep that in mind. Guys, if you want to work with me, you can work one-on-one with me. I do full weekly check-ins with each one of my clients. You have access to my personal phone number. I build out your full custom training plan, diet plan, recovery plan, literally everything. And I change the plans, on a very, very frequent basis, depending on how you're responding. It's super personalized, and I am taking on more clients. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely check the link out in the description box below. But let me know if you guys have any questions. I'm going to do more videos on this, so let me know what you guys want to see. If you could, click that like button, smash subscribe if you haven't already. All glory to God. God bless you, and have a great rest of your week.